to relax and unwind, allowing your brain to do its best work. In contrast to our last class, this one is going to be a whole lot less active and a lot more laid back. So let's start with a question. How many of you have experienced forgetfulness, like the inability to remember the name of somebody that has a familiar face to you or approaches you as though they know you? How about difficulty with finding words when you're having a conversation, or trouble finding your car in a large shopping mall or parking lot, rather? Or even somebody who's having difficulty at work because they've made a mistake, because they have poor concentration, focus, memory, those kinds of things. So just think about how that made you feel. And in these situations, people often feel embarrassed or afraid of being judged. But on the one end of the scale, they may just be afraid of being judged. On the other end of the scale, they may be scared to death because of this thought of possibly having dementia, like someone else in their family or like someone that they know or have heard of. So because brain fog, cognitive decline, dementia, and Alzheimer's are seen as progressive and irreversible in our culture and in our medical profession today, it can often cause understandable and paralyzing fear. Today we'll look at this more closely because I hope to leave you with a few ideas of how to deal with stress in a way that allows optimal brain function. Keeping in mind that when it comes to brain dysfunction, the earlier you recognize a potential problem and work to address it, the more likely you are to be able to recover function. So it isn't something that I want you to just sit back and keep a secret and hold to yourself because of the fear. So disclaimers. Just a few reminders. I will not be providing any medical advice during this talk. The information I present is for educational purposes only, and please don't discontinue any medications without consulting your prescribing practitioner. So the agenda for tonight, we're going to be talking about the stress reaction, just what that is in the body, and then the effects of this on the brain and the body. And then we're going to talk about what it takes to activate the vagus nerve in a way that will help downregulate the stress reaction in the body. So the vagus nerve is the nerve that is the controlling nerve for the stress reaction. So stress has many, many faces. And really, stress is just the body's response to any kind of demand, whether it's a good demand or a bad demand. It doesn't really matter. If it's extra demand on the body, that is considered stress. So it might be physical stress. That would be like injuries, trauma, infections, toxins, inflammation, or just simply increased workload. It could be mental stress. So this would be like trying to manage too many projects at one time, multitasking, maybe trying to navigate a maze of technology, or to accomplish a so-called simple task or something that you're doing at work that really stresses your brain a little bit more. Emotional stress, that's going to be things like worry, fear, anxiety. They all come in, we call them different things, but they are all under the same kind of heading of fear, worry, or anxiety. So, and then spiritual stress can be different for each person depending on the person and their beliefs, and spiritual stress can be as difficult as any other stress and take on many different forms. So really, stress boils down to perception. What is your perception of what's going on? And is it a problem, or is it a in this case, this one woman, she thinks this roller coaster ride is fun and exciting, and she's just laughing her head off, and the other person is not. So that's a difference in perspective, and it probably has a lot to do with their previous experience, either on a roller coaster or a vehicle going fast or heights or things like that. So it's going to depend on your previous experience. So again, when it comes to perspective, it's like the person who sees the glass half empty, as opposed to a different person who sees the same glass half full. So this is a beautiful picture, and really the perspective when I look at this is: does the mother who comes across this thing think, "Oh, how beautiful," or does she think, "How am I ever going to clean up this mess?" Okay, so it's a matter of perspective. So, in the world of stress and stress management, some of the things that we will, some that I would recommend for people if they're having trouble refocusing their perspective is to look into the work of Byron Katie. She has something called The Work, and it's a very simple yet profound practice that involves solidifying your point of view on paper and then learning to look at that point of view from multiple other different directions. And it really is a simple process, and it can really redefine how you look at a particular situation that's stressing you. So that's one way of doing it. Just learning how to shift your perspective with the possibility that there may be another way to look at it. And some of us have a really hard time doing that, but it can change this perspective in many ways. So when it comes to stress, emotional stress, and the problem of fear, is that it activates the limbic system in the center of the brain. So that's this yellow area. And this limbic system is a primitive region of the brain that is reactive. It's meant to be reflexive and reactive to anything that is perceived as a danger. And the body has different ways of determining whether it thinks something is a danger, and make you just react without thinking at all. The problem is that it works at the expense of the more well-developed thinking and language centers of the brain. So that would be the peach-colored areas, or orange or peach-colored areas. Those are the higher levels of the brain that control language and thinking and planning and processing and things like that, that you don't have time for that you often don't have time for in an emergency situation. So the problem with using your limbic system, that emotional center of the brain, over and over and over, is that you really get a highly developed emotional center. You become very reactive, very emotional. That area of the brain enlarges because you're using it all the time. And when we do some of the practices that down-regulate stress, what we see is that it will decrease that portion of the brain and increase other portions of the orange part of the brain here, the thinking, planning, language centers of the brain, and increase the size of those areas so that they are working a little bit better. But when it comes to dementia and cognitive decline, we don't want our emotional brain to be the primary functioning part of our brain. And that can happen very easily if you're not really focusing to and intending to do the things that increase the feeling of safety so that you can activate the thinking portions of the brain. And that emotional center will actually shrink in size when you do that. So stage fright is a perfect illustration of the fear center of the brain hijacking the thinking and language areas of the brain. This is exactly what I'm talking about. And when we're dealing with dementia and cognitive dysfunction, that fear center can just take over and make it very difficult to think a situation through clearly and rationally. The vagus nerve. So I spoke about this in the agenda for a second, but the vagus nerve is the main primary nerve that runs the length of the body. So it starts at the base of the brain there in yellow. The brain is pink, but the base of the brain is where the vagus nerve starts in yellow there, and it extends all over the body. So to different areas of the head, neck, and face, to the areas in the neck where the thyroid is located. It goes down into the chest and innervates the lungs. It goes into the chest again and innervates the heart. You see it go down into the abdomen, so it innervates the whole intestinal tract. So the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, the adrenal glands, the kidneys, every organ, liver, pancreas, everything is innervated by the vagus nerve coming from the brain. So are the muscles of the upper extremities, the arms, and the lower extremities, the legs. And so when your brain perceives danger, your vagus nerve sends a signal all the way through your body to every one of those organs, and it tells them to be on high alert, to be on the defensive, because there's a danger, and it needs to carry the signals so that you can be able to respond to that danger. And so people who are under stress have this activated all the time. They're always telling their organs, be in high alert, be in the stress state, operate as though we have to defend ourselves all of the time. And it can be very, very damaging over time to those organs to be in that state constantly. It also carries the vagus portion of the nerve, which is so that first part was the fight, flight, or freeze response. It also carries the nerves that are the opposite of that. So the rest and restore response. And the fight, flight, or freeze response is called the sympathetic, and the rest and restore response is called the parasympathetic. You don't really need to remember that. Just remember that there are two opposing types of nerves going on here, telling the body what to do. So let me see here. The stress reaction. So again, the fight, flight, or freeze response is coming from the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain, down through the vagus nerve, alerting the entire body to tense muscles, or to, for running, or increase heart rate and blood pressure, so you can get more oxygen to the body for this fight or this flight. And it will, the adrenal glands will be stimulated to pour out more adrenaline. Oh, the stomach's going to pour out more stomach acid during this time. Anyway, but really what's happening too, the thinking and language centers in the brain are shutting down, and the emotional and reactive response is taking over. So when we have the relaxation response going on, this is going to be a rest and restore response. This is usually what occurs at night. We like this to be occurring at night anyway, when you're resting, because that's when the digestive process is really active at certain times, really absorbing those nutrients from the small intestine and processing. So this also is done when there's a perception from the brain to the body of safety. This does not happen if your body is not feeling safe. And so, if the body is feeling safe, then that signals, if the brain perceives safety, then the body is given the signal that it's safe and it's time to rest and restore. and rebuild and recover. So really, these two systems need to be in balance. It becomes a matter of the two systems that the vagus nerve needs to maintain a balance for. And if you have too much stress over time, you produce chemicals in your body that are very damaging to the system. And so you'll have damaged blood vessels everywhere, including the brain. You'll have increased inflammation because of these excessive signals of stress. And again, inflammation can be very damaging to the brain. It decreases the size of the thinking and processing areas of the brain and enlarges that limbic or emotional center. And it just causes, it makes it difficult to sleep because of the high cortisol. Let's see. Anxiety and depression inhibits, the cortisol from it inhibits serotonin, which is that chemical that makes you feel peaceful. We talked about impaired immune function. So it actually decreases or increases rather certain immune cells that are for stress anyway, increases certain immune cells that you need to fight off cancers. It decreases that chemical we talked about, BDNF, that helps to build new brain cells and new connections between brain cells. It just can make you feel exhausted, overwhelmed, and unable to maintain healthy lifestyle habits, including sleep. Okay, stress will increase the craving for sugar and carbohydrates, and you may be unable to exercise because of increased fatigue. So lots of things going on. So stimulants can actually fuel the fire of stress and anxiety in the brain, and they tend to ramp up the blood pressure and the heart rate and increase the tendency to be in that fight, flight, or freeze mode, just the opposite of what we're trying to do if we're trying to unwind. So a warm bath or shower will relax the muscles of the body and give your brain the signal that all is well. If you add some soothing essential oils to the water or to the air, like a diffuser, you can get that added effect of that in your brain. It tends to help relax you, like cloves, the jasmine, the geranium, the rose, the cinnamon, the lavender, and the lang lang. These are all warming types of essential oils, and they're very, very relaxing and signal the brain that all is well, unless you don't like the smell of it or something. But find something you really like that can be really nice. Music. Now, listening to music can help you relax from the brain level. It's very, very effective. It's using your auditory centers for hearing in your brain. And it's also using maybe memory and some emotional centers of the brain. But another thing about music is that if you are singing or if you are humming, you are stimulating that vagus nerve and helping to balance it in the center of the body. So humming, singing, and listening to music all are going to be really good for this downregulation. Breathing. Breathing is a very, very simple one, and that's why you hear about it so much. It doesn't cost anything. You do it in the moment, and you don't have to ask anybody for room or permission or go for any special equipment, anything like that. It's just so simple. And really, it's the motion of the deep breathing that actually presses on that nerve and stimulates it. And it will lower the heart rate. It will lower the blood pressure. It's one of those things when somebody comes into the emergency room, we will sometimes have them take a deep breath and hold it because it puts pressure on that vagus nerve and it lowers the heart rate and it lowers the blood pressure. So it works very quickly and so simply. And we'll talk about this breathing just a little bit more later on in the program. So, just simplifying your life can sometimes be such a reliever of stress, emotional stress. It can be as effective as just using a calendar now, or a planner, or a notebook, and keeping track of things so that you don't have to be stressed to do something that you're really struggling with. So, decreasing that stress by decluttering is very nice. We talked about this last time, and I spelled clutter wrong here. Oh no, here's the R way down here. I'll have to fix that. But decluttering is also going to be one of those things that can really take the edge off some of your stress that you're experiencing in your day-to-day life. So just decluttering, organizing a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot to make a big difference in how you feel. So meditation. Meditation does not have to look like somebody sitting with their hands out and they're touching their fingertips to their thumb. It doesn't have to look like that. It can simply look like just sitting with no thoughts. You can have your eyes open, closed, whatever feels good to you. In fact, if you have your eyes open, sometimes people will just think you're daydreaming or lost in thought, whatever. But I mean, that kind of meditation, when you're just sitting and you're emptying your brain of no thoughts, can be very, very effective. And, just to allow yourself 5 minutes, maybe 2 or 3 times a day to do this, will reset your system. So, if you're sitting with no thoughts, it just is a matter of when a thought comes into your head to just let it go and go back to no thoughts. And then when another one comes up, just notice it and just let it go. And sometimes you'll notice that all of a sudden you feel tense with that thought. It's a good barometer for you to be able to determine that certain thoughts are really causing a stress reaction in you, but just notice it and let it go. So don't feel like that it has to be anything complicated. It's just a matter of just sitting with no thoughts. Now, there are other types of meditation. For example, there are meditative prayers where people will focus on a certain idea or a certain passage in the Bible or in the Torah. Praying the rosary, interestingly, when I didn't realize this when I was growing up, because I actually was raised in the Catholic Church. And so when I was growing up, people would pray the rosary, and it just seemed like such a long, repetitive thing. But it actually is a very meditative, and it can have the same effects as a meditation. And it's because it's this non-thinking, just doing kind of process. And so anyway, that was an interesting little fact that I learned about the rosary. So this is another type of meditative practice, and it's just focused movement. All they're doing a practice called Tai Chi. If you haven't ever done this, you can look at this online. I'll see if I can find a site for you to look at some examples of it, or some things that you can try at home that are really simple. But it is a very slow, balanced process. It is also, again, a mind-body exercise like what we were discussing last week. And it's also very, very balancing for the vagus nerve again. Here's another type of meditation. This is just a yoga pose, and it's just focused standing. Again, very meditative if you allow your brain to just empty itself of the thoughts as they arise, then pass through. Another type is focused walking. So this, we do this with people that tend to be just a little bit more active and have trouble sitting. Okay, so, somebody who's just got a lot of energy, I might have them do a focused walk. So to pick a certain length of time, a certain route, and to follow it, and to just focus on their steps, one right after another for this route. And if they get distracted by somebody's dog in the neighborhood, or someone who's come out to say hi, it's okay to stop and deal with the dog, or talk with the neighbor for a few minutes, but then go back to your walk and just make it this very focused 15-20 minute walk, whichever you decide works for you. So it's best to have a very not a route that's going to be highly changing and interesting. We're not so much interested in the route as just focusing on taking the steps. And again, it's just a focused practice. I want to go over now, deviate just a little bit to this myth of multitasking, because I thought this was interesting when I was reading the brain research on this. It was talking about the myth of multitasking. And, if there ever was a mental stress, multitasking would be it. So it's just good to recognize that your brain does not actually do multiple things at the same time. Your brain activates different areas for different tasks, and it activates each of these areas one at a time. So if you are trying to do multiple tasks, you are switching from certain areas of the brain for one task, and then other areas of the brain for the second task, and then new areas of the brain for the third task. And by trying to do them all at once, you may not actually be performing any of them to any great degree. So really, what they're saying is that in the brain, at least on the brain scans, it does not appear that multitasking is actually saving you any time. You may have to do it sometimes, but it's not a particularly good time saver. This is another one that I sometimes prescribe to people for dealing with emotional stress. And there's another one I'm going to show you after this. So EFT is a newer therapy that you might see out there. It's called Emotional Freedom Technique. It's been out for at least 10 years. I think more like mid 2000s is when it first started becoming more known. And anyway, during this therapy, first of all, when we first started doing this, we didn't really understand until very recently how this technique worked. And we thought that when the person was tapping on these various points, their forehead, their chin, the side of the hand, which is the karate chop point, we really thought that the reason this technique was working was because they were tapping on these acupuncture points, okay, with some acupressure by doing this tapping. So during this therapy, the person brings up like an emotionally stressful event and rates it on a scale of 1 to 10, and then is guided through a whole series of tapping sites on the head and the neck and the chest until the emotional activation of the stressful event goes from being very high on a scale of 1 to 10 to 0 or 1. So anyway, that's what we thought. It was because you were pressing on these acupressure points. And then there was another technique that seemed to work in a similar way. And it's called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And this one was another one. They weren't sure how this was working to begin with, but in this one, the person would bring up a stressful event and or something that triggers a really strong emotional response, and they would rate that emotional response on a scale of 1 to 10 for the degree of emotional stress. And then they would begin a series of eye movements back and forth. And what they thought was, wow, it's just like when they looked on the scans, actually, when they looked on the brain scans at what was going on in the brain during the time the person was doing this, it appeared to be very similar to what was happening in the brain during REM sleep, so during dream sleep. And so they thought, wow, it must be activating these same areas that are being activated during dream sleep, and that's why it's working for these people. And so interestingly, though, in EMDR, they eventually started to realize that it didn't have to be this eye movement going back and forth that helped the person to desensitize and reprocess. And in fact, that you could get the same kind of effect from it if you were tapping on your body. So you would go from tapping on your left leg to your right leg, something like that, or your like cross your arms and then tap on your left shoulder and right shoulder, and just go back and forth like that while you were visualizing this traumatic event that caused you emotional distress, and so what seemed to be happening in this process is very similar to what goes on in REM sleep. And that is that your body is taking these memories and it's shifting them back and forth between the different sides of the brain. And that's what happens when you tap on one side of the body and then the other side of the body. Back and forth is you shift a stimulus in the brain, from one side to the other. So when you tap on the right side, it stimulates the left side of the brain, and vice versa. When you tap on the right side, it stimulates the left side of the brain, and it goes back and forth. And it's this process of passing the stimulus back and forth that seems to allow the brain to reprocess that traumatic event or this emotional trauma that people have. It's very, very useful with people with PTSD. It works very quickly, and it can take the place of years and years of psychotherapy. These people will sometimes have, usually what I'm finding is that within the first 3 sessions, we can tell if it's starting to work for them. And then to process something completely, it might be, maybe it's going to be different for everybody, but I'm just going to say 10 to 20 sessions for most people, but certainly not 10 to 20 years of psychotherapy. So it's a fascinating area of brain research that helps reprocess these traumatic memories, and at a far faster rate without talk therapy. Neither one of these 2 techniques use talk therapy. So very interesting. We have some tools that we use. These are some of the technologies out there. On the first one, that's the smartwatches. We all know that we have smartwatches that tell us if we have high levels of stress, medium or low. Some are more accurate in telling you that than others. But if they're telling you you have high, and you're wearing one of those, then we need to figure out what can, use it as a biofeedback and figure out what can get that stress level down. The second one in here is something called Muse, and it's also something that is a biofeedback device. It can even be used in children. It's pretty simple to use, and it has to do with sending signals, again, back and forth in the brain to reactivate or activate the parasympathetic portion of the vagus nerve. And then the third one here is called Heart Math. I will have a Heart Math machine here for the people that are in my class to let them try that. But really what this is a little device that detects heart rate variability. And we want high heart rate variability, because if your heart rate and your breathing are variable, it tells us that is a state in which your body is in the parasympathetic mode. It's actually a balanced sympathetic and parasympathetic mode, and much healthier for your body. They find that people who have high coherence or heart rate variability are much healthier people, just all across the board. A couple of these on the bottom, these are apps. One is the Calm app I mentioned, which you can use for sleeping also to help you fall asleep. They have some really boring stories on there. But it's also one you can use during the day. It just has some different breaks and sounds and things like that that can just help you just relax for a few minutes. And then Headspace is a kind of app for meditation for people who are not meditators. They're just not used to it. And it's a really good one for that. So at this point in our talk, if anyone needs a break, this is a good break point. So just pause the video, or if you're in my class, we'll take a quick break and then we'll move on to the next one. This is helping also This is going to be one of the new techniques. Let's try this again. This is a technique that's easy, inexpensive, takes very little time, like many of the ones I'm going to show you here. And this one's called progressive muscle tension. It involves tensing the muscle groups of the body, starting at the toes, working upward to the head and face, and it can be done lying down, but also just sitting in a chair. I will try to put a website on the YouTube video so you know where to go to look at an example of this. If you are in the class, we will be doing this. You can do it lying down, and you can do it sitting. We're going to be tensing each muscle group from the toes upward to the top of the head, and then we're going to just kind of pay attention to our body and how it feels after we've tensed and relaxed all the various muscle groups from the feet all the way upward, and then just let our bodies float in space for just a few seconds before we stop. So, okay. And the next one is, this is a very interesting, it's called Satanama meditation. And I will put a website on there for this also. This is another type of meditation practice that has a lot of research behind it and shows just the wonderful benefits specifically for improving executive function in people who have cognitive decline. And it's such a simple one to use that even people who are struggling with their brain function can do this very easily. The research that was done was one in which they took a group of older people with cognitive dysfunction, and they were moderate. They were moderate dysfunction, brain dysfunction group, and they put them through this series where you would touch your index finger to your thumb, then your middle finger to your thumb, then your ring finger to your thumb, and your little finger to your thumb, each time saying the various tone, the sa, ta, na, ma. And to do this, set your timer. Start out by doing it for 5 minutes, but in the actual research, they did it for 10 minutes a day, and they did it for 2 months, and then they measured cognitive function in these patients, and they found an increase in executive function by doing this consistently for that 2-month period of time. So a really easy, simple type of meditation practice. Since awareness of your surroundings is essential for your feelings of safety, and feeling safe is essential for lowering anxiety and decreasing the use of the emotional center of the brain, that limbic system, the practice of mindfulness is perfect for accomplishing these things. So again, it's easily accessible, it's free, it's available anywhere at any time, and it just simply means being able to be the observer of how you feel, what you see, what you're doing, seeing, hearing, touching, feeling, what's going on right now in this moment without any judgment. That's what mindfulness is about. So this one is called Pause, Notice, and Choose. And this is an interesting one. This is another form of mindfulness, a simple technique that originated in the Veterans Administration healthcare system a few years ago and was originally used in their whole health program. But now it's available to the general public through the website called Whole Health Institute, which I'll put on the information below for the YouTube for this YouTube video. It's a very simple mindfulness technique. It's called Pause, Notice, and Choose, just like I put here. And it's designed to be used anytime and anywhere. It's exactly what it says. So you pause for a few seconds when it can be when you're stressed or triggered or you have some kind of emotional upheaval going on, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be that you've been rushed all day and you just want to stop. You just want to pause. And then to notice. And when we say notice, we want you to just notice how you feel right now, and don't place any judgment on it. Just, this is how I feel. And then once you've done that, to take a few seconds to choose what you're going to do next. Okay? So it's just a matter of this very slow and intentional process of slowing things down a little, taking stock in what's going on, and then making a conscious choice of what you're going to do next. Very easy. Mindfulness, again, can be done anywhere, anytime. It takes a few seconds to stop and notice how you feel, what you're looking at, what you're hearing in the moment. And this is something that I actually do at a certain point in my walk. When I walk to the farthest point in my walk each day, I actually take 3 to 5 minutes to stop and do a mindfulness practice. And we're going to do something similar here in this next slide. So here, we're just going to pause and we're going to do a short guided meditation. And in this case, it's going to be a survey of the body. We're going to do square breathing, and it's a technique in which you are going to take a deep breath to 4 seconds. It doesn't even have to be a deep breath. Just take a breath. 4 seconds in, hold it, 4 seconds. 4 seconds out, hold it, 4 seconds. So it's square breathing. Take a deep breath, hold it for 4 seconds, out, hold it for 4 seconds, and then, so I'm going to count this. We're going to do 3 cycles. So in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. I didn't do that right. I better try this again. So it's going to be inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, wait, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. So 3 breaths, 3 square breaths. Then you're just going to breathe easy now, and we're going to just let your muscles relax and notice where your body is still holding muscle tension. So let those muscle groups relax and melt into the floor or the chair, wherever you're sitting or lying. You can have your eyes open at this point, and I want you to notice each thing within the range of your sight, one thing at a time, moving slowly from one thing, noticing the next thing, then the next thing, and then the next. You're going to start to relax and close your eyes slowly and just allow that to happen and rest with your eyes closed. Now we're going to listen. We're going to stop and we're going to listen to each and every sound. The wind, your breathing, the hum of the lights, the walls as they creak, your breath, the ringing in your ears, your heartbeat. Okay. Now we're going to take the time with your eyes closed to feel the soles of your feet, your toes, your ankles, your shins, your calves, your knees, the back of your thighs on the floor or the chair, the front of your thighs, your buttocks, your hips on the floor or the chair, your lower belly and torso, the back of your ribs, the front, your chest, your hands, wrists, forearms, upper arms, shoulders, the back of your neck, and now the front of your neck, your jaw, your mouth, your ears, the back of your head, your nose, eyes, eyebrows, forehead, and the top of your head. Now, feel the space inside your feet. Now the space inside your hands, the space inside your whole body. And now let go of the boundaries of your body. Like your skin is just disappearing, it's just dissolving. And let yourself float here in this space. Then open your eyes slowly when you're ready and look around for a few moments. Notice what time of day it is. Notice the largest round object that you see. Notice the smallest black object that you see. Notice how good you feel after spending the last few minutes doing this simple mindfulness exercise. People who are unable to connect, we're going to talk about social connections here. So people who are unable to connect due to lack of bonding in early childhood or trauma later in life often find it difficult to feel safe. People who are isolated and socially disconnected have much higher rates of health problems, but particularly dementia. The brain areas involved with social connection may become dormant, not dominant. But luckily, they can be activated later in life with focused effort, which can help lower the possibility of developing dementia. So if you are maybe somebody who's just a real, not necessarily just an introvert, but just doesn't like to be in or near or around people, this might be something that you would focus on, is just making some social connections. Social connections give us a sense of safety. They allow us to relax. They stabilize the stress response. And again, allowing the language and the thinking centers of the brain to function more effectively. So, laughter. Just like breathing and singing, laughter stimulates the vagus nerve. It lowers the heart rate and the blood pressure. Surrounding yourself with the things that you love, the things that bring you joy, and that activate areas of your brain that shut down during times of stress is what occurs when we are experiencing laughter and joy. I once knew an Amish woman. She was in one of my classes and she did her final research paper on laughter. And what was interesting was she herself was this very, very stoic woman in her 50s. She just had a stoic face. There was never a smile. There was never any kind of emotion that crossed her face other than maybe some fear. And that face never really changed. She did say that in her childhood, all of her photographs of her, all of the photographs that were ever taken showed her exactly like that. And she did not realize it until she was in her 50s that this is how she was. So she decided to do her research project on laughter. And it's interesting because the research shows that even 15 minutes a day of fake laughter, even fake laughter, can cause significant changes in the stress reaction in your body. It can lower the blood pressure and the heart rate and just change the chemical composition of the body in terms of your mental health and your immune health. Even if the person, even if all they're doing is pretending to laugh. So my friend decided she was going to do this daily practice of laughter for 6 months. And she described this. She said she would go into her den and close the door, and she would set her timer for 15 minutes and just go through the motions of laughing. And at first she was forcing herself to laugh to do this. But she said, amazingly, it was only in a matter of minutes before it actually started to feel funny to her, and the laughter became more spontaneous and true. The change in her, though, was dramatic over the course of the 6 months. This woman in this picture reminds me of this friend of mine at the end of 6 months. She went from being a relatively silent, shy, stoic woman to being openly relaxed, outgoing, and a woman who just radiated joy. So lastly, I want to leave with you the practice of gratitude. Now, the practice of gratitude ensures that you are completely present in the moment when you are grateful for something. That's just the way gratitude works. And so just thinking about it in general, it's a really easy one to use. I often have people use this in the evenings to start a gratitude journal if we're really having trouble with regulating their stress. But I just want you all to know that I am profoundly grateful to all of you for being present and allowing me the opportunity to provide this amazing information to you all. So thank you.